Little John and the Tanner of Blythe. One fine day, not long after Little John had left abiding with the sheriff, and had come back with his worship's cook to the merry greenwood, as has just been told, Robin Hood and a few chosen fellows of his band lay upon the soft sward beneath the greenwood tree where they dwelled. The day was warm and sultry, so that while most of the band were scattered through the forest upon this mission and upon that, these few stout fellows lay lazily beneath the shade of the tree in the soft afternoon, passing jests among themselves and telling merry stories, with laughter and mirth. All the air was laden with the bitter fragrance of the May, and all the bosky shades of the woodlands beyond rang with the sweet song of birds, the throstle-cock, the cuckoo, and the wood-pigeon. And with the song of birds mingled the cool sound of the gurgling brook that leapt out of the forest shades and ran fretting amid its rough gray stones across the sunlit open glade before the trysting-tree. And a fair sight was that half-score of tall, stout yeomen, all clad in Lincoln green, lying beneath the broad-spreading branches of the great oak tree, amid the quivering leaves of which the sunlight shivered and fell in dancing patches upon the grass. Suddenly Robin Hood smote his knee. "By St. Dunstan," quoth he, "I had nigh forgot that quarter-day cometh on apace, and yet no cloth of Lincoln green in all our store. It must be looked to, and that in quick season. Come, busk thee, Little John, stir those lazy bones of thine, for thou must get thee straightway to our good gossip, the draper Hugh Longshanks of Ancaster.
Bid him send us straightway 20 yards of fair cloth of Lincoln green, and mayhap the journey may take some of the fat from off thy bones that thou hast gotten from lazy living at our dear sheriff's." "Nay," muttered Little John, for he had heard so much upon this score that he was sore upon the point. "Nay, truly, mayhap I have more flesh upon my joints than I once had. Yet, flesh or no flesh, I doubt not that I could still hold my place and footing upon a narrow bridge against e'er a yeoman in Sherwood, or Nottinghamshire for the matter of that, even though he had no more fat upon his bones than thou hast, good master." At this reply, a great shout of laughter went up, and all looked at Robin Hood, for each man knew that Little John spake of a certain fight that happened between their master and himself, through which they first became acquainted, the cuckoo and the wood-pigeon, and with the song of birds mingled the cool sound of the gurgling brook that leapt out of the forest shades and ran fretting amid its rough, gray stones across the sunlit open glade before the trysting-tree. And a fair sight was that half-score of tall, stout yeomen, all clad in Lincoln green, lying beneath the broad-spreading branches of the great oak tree, amid the quivering leaves of which the sunlight shivered and fell in dancing patches upon the grass. Suddenly Robin Hood smote his knee. "By St. Dunstan," quoth he, "I had nigh forgot that quarter-day cometh on apace, and yet no cloth of Lincoln green in all our store. It must be looked to, and that in quick season. Come, busk thee, Little John, stir those lazy bones of thine, for thou must get thee straightway to our good gossip, the draper Hugh Longshanks of Ancaster." "Nay," quoth Robin Hood, laughing louder than all, "Heaven forbid that I should doubt thee, for I care for no taste of thy staff myself, Little John. I must needs own that there are those of my band can handle a 7-foot staff more deftly than I. Yet no man in all Nottinghamshire can draw a grey goose shaft with my fingers. Nevertheless, a journey to Ancaster may not be ill for thee, so go thou as I bid, and thou hadst best go this very evening, for since thou hast abided at the sheriff's, many know thy face, and if thou goest in broad daylight, thou mayest get thyself into a coil with some of his worship's men-at-arms. Bide thou here till I bring thee money to pay our good Hugh. I warrant he hath no better customers in all Nottinghamshire than we. So saying, Robin left them and entered the forest. Not far from the trysting tree was a great rock in which a chamber had been hewn, the entrance being barred by a massive oaken door, 2 palms' breadth in thickness, studded about with spikes and fastened with a great padlock. This was the treasure house of the band, and thither Robin Hood went, and unlocking the door, entered the chamber, from which he brought forth a bag of gold, which he gave to Little John, to pay Hugh Longshanks withal for the cloth of Lincoln green. Then up got Little John, and taking the bag of gold, which he thrust into his bosom, he strapped a girdle about his loins, took a stout pikestaff full 7 feet long in his hand, and set forth upon his journey. So he strode whistling along the leafy forest path that led to Fossway,
turning neither to the right hand nor the left, until at last he came to where the path branched, leading on the one hand onward to Fossey Way, and on the other, as well Little John knew, to the merry Blue Boar Inn. Here Little John suddenly ceased whistling and stopped in the middle of the path. First he looked up, and then he looked down, and then, tilting his cap over one eye, he slowly scratched the back part of his head. For thus it was, at the sight of these 2 roads, 2 voices began to alarm within him, the one crying, "There lies the road to the Blue Boar Inn, a can of brown October, and a merry night with sweet companions such as thou mayest find there." The other, "There lies the way to Ancaster and the duty thou art sent upon." Now, the first of these 2 voices was far the louder, for Little John had grown passing fond of good living through abiding at the sheriff's house. So presently, looking up into the blue sky, across which bright clouds were sailing like silver boats and swallows skimming in circling flight, quoth he, "I fear me it will rain this evening, so I'll in stop at the Blue Boar till it passes by. For I know my good master would not have me wet to the skin." So, without more ado, off he strode down the path that lay the way of his likings. Now there was no sign of any foul weather, but when one wishes to do a thing, as Little John did, one finds no lack of reasons for the doing. 4 merry wags were at the Blue Boar Inn, a butcher, a beggar, and 2 barefoot friars. Little John heard them singing from afar as he walked through the hush of the mellow twilight that was now falling over hill and dale. Right glad were they to welcome such a merry blade as Little John. Fresh cans of ale were brought, and with jest and song and merry tales the hours slipped away on fleeting wings. None thought of time or tide till the night was so far gone that Little John put by the thought of setting forth upon his journey again that night, and so bided at the Blue Boar Inn until the morrow. Now it was an ill piece of luck for Little John that he left his duty for his pleasure, and he paid a great score for it, as we are all apt to do in the same case, as you shall see. Up he rose at the dawn of the next day, and, taking his stout pikestaff in his hand, he set forth upon his journey once more, as though he would make up for lost time. In the good town of Blythe there lived a stout tanner, celebrated far and near for feats of strength and many tough bouts at wrestling and the quarterstaff. For 5 years he had held the mid-country champion belt for wrestling, till the great Adam o' Lincoln cast him in the ring and broke one of his ribs. But at quarterstaff he had never yet met his match in all the country about. Besides all this, he dearly loved the long bow and a sly jaunt in the forest when the moon was full and the dun deer in season. So that the king's rangers kept a shrewd eye upon him and his doings, for Arthur a Blant's house was apt to have a plenty of meat in it that was more like venison than the law allowed. Now Arthur had been to Nottingham town the day before Little John set forth on his errand, there to sell a 50 of tanned cowhides. At the dawn of the same day that Little John left the inn, he started from Nottingham, homeward for Blythe. His way led, all in the dewy morn, past the verge of Sherwood Forest, where the birds were welcoming the lovely day with a great and merry jubilee. Across the tanner's shoulders was slung his stout quarterstaff, ever near enough to him to be gripped quickly, and on his head was a cap of doubled cowhide, so tough that it could hardly be cloven even by a broadsword. Now, quoth Arthur a Bland to himself, when he had come to that part of the road that cut through a corner of the forest, no doubt at this time of year the dun deer are coming from the forest depths nigher to the open meadowlands. Mayhap I may chance to catch a sight of the dainty brown darlings thus early in the morn. For there was nothing he loved better than to look upon a tripping herd of deer, even when he could not tickle their ribs with a cloth-yard shaft. Accordingly, quitting the path, he went peeping this way and that through the underbrush, spying now here and now there, with all the wiles of a master of woodcraft, and of one who had more than once donned a doublet of Lincoln green. Now, as Little John stepped blithely along, thinking of nothing but of such things as the sweetness of the hawthorn buds that bedecked the hedgerows, or gazing upward at the lark that, springing from the dewy grass, hung aloft on quivering wings in the yellow sunlight, pouring forth its song that fell like a falling star from the sky, his luck led him away from the highway, not far from the spot where Arthur a Bland was peeping this way and that through the leaves of the thickets. Hearing a rustling of the branches, Little John stopped, and presently caught sight of the brown cowhide cap of the tanner moving among the bushes. "I do much wonder," quoth Little John to himself, "what yon knave is after, that he should go thus peeping and peering about. I verily believe that yon scurvy varlet is no better than a thief, and cometh here after our own and the good king's dun deer." For by much roving in the forest, Little John had come to look upon all the deer in Sherwood as belonging to Robin Hood and his band, as much as to good King Harry. "Nay," quoth he again, after a time, "this matter must e'en be looked into." So, quitting the high road, he also entered the thickets and began spying around after stout Arthur a Bland. So for a long time they both of them went hunting about, Little John after the tanner, and the tanner after the deer. At last Little John trod upon a stick, which snapped under his foot, whereupon, hearing the noise, the tanner turned quickly and caught sight of the yeoman. Seeing that the tanner had spied him out, Little John put a bold face upon the matter. "Hello," quoth he, "what art you doing here, thou naughty fellow? Who art thou that comest ranging Sherwood's paths? In very sooth, thou hast an evil cast of countenance, and I do think truly that thou art no better than a thief, and comest after our good king's deer." "Nay," quoth the tanner boldly, for, though taken by surprise, he was not a man to be frightened by big words. "Thou liest in thy teeth. I am no thief, but an honest craftsman. As for my countenance, it is what it is, and for the matter of that, thine own is none too pretty, thou saucy fellow." "Ha!" quoth Little John in a great loud voice, "wouldst thou give me back talk? Now, I have a great part of a mind to crack thy pate for thee. I would have thee know, fellow, that I am, as it were, one of the king's foresters. Leastwise," muttered he to himself, "I and my friends do take good care of our good sovereign's deer." "I care not who thou art," answered the bold tanner, "and unless thou hast many more of thy kind by thee, thou canst never make Arthur a Bland cry a mercy." "Is it so?" cried Little John in a rage. "Now, by my faith, thou saucy rogue, thy tongue hath led thee into a pit thou wilt have a sorry time getting out of, for I will give thee such a drubbing as ne'er hast thou had in all thy life before. Take thy staff in thy hand, fellow, for I will not smite an unarmed man." "Marry, come up with a murrain," cried the tanner, for he too had talked himself into a fume. "Big words ne'er killed so much as a mouse. Who art thou that talkest so freely of cracking the head of Arthur a Bland? If I do not tan thy hide this day as ne'er I tanned the calf's hide in all my life before, split my staff into skewers for lamb's flesh and call me no more brave man. Now, look to thyself, fellow." "Stay," said Little John. "Let us first measure our cudgels. I do reckon my staff longer than thine, and I would not take vantage of thee by even so much as an inch."
"Nay, I pass not for length," answered the tanner. "My staff is long enough to knock down a calf. So, look to thyself, fellow, I say again." So, without more ado, each gripped his staff in the middle, and with fell and angry looks they came slowly together.
Now news had been brought to Robin Hood how that Little John, instead of doing his bidding, had passed by duty for pleasure, and so had stopped overnight with merry company at the Blue Boar Inn, instead of going straight to Ancaster. So, being vexed to his heart by this, he set forth at dawn of day to seek Little John at the Blue Boar, or at least to meet the yeoman on the way, and ease his heart of what he thought of the matter. As thus he strode along in anger, putting together the words he would use to chide Little John, he heard, of a sudden, loud and angry voices, as of men in a rage, passing fell words back and forth from one to the other. At this, Robin Hood stopped and listened. "Surely," quoth he to himself, "that is Little John's voice, and he is talking in anger also. Methinks the other is strange to my ears. Now heaven forfend that my good trusty Little John should have fallen into the hands of the king's rangers. I must see to this matter, and that quickly." Thus spoke Robin Hood to himself, all his anger passing away like a breath from the window-pane at the thought that perhaps his trusty right-hand man was in some danger of his life. So cautiously he made his way through the thickets whence the voices came, and pushing aside the leaves, peeped into the little open space where the two men, staff in hand, were coming slowly together. "Ha!" quoth Robin to himself, "here is merry sport afoot. Now I would give 3 golden angels from my own pocket if yon stout fellow would give Little John a right sound drubbing. It would please me to see him well thumped for having failed in my bidding. I fear me, though, there is but poor chance of my seeing such a pleasant sight."
So saying, he stretched himself at length upon the ground, that he might not only see the sport the better, but that he might enjoy the merry sight at his ease. As you may have seen 2 dogs that think to fight, walking slowly round and round each other, neither cur wishing to begin the combat, so those 2 stout yeomen moved slowly around, each watching for a chance to take the other unawares, and so get in the first blow. At last, Little John struck like a flash, and rap! The tanner met the blow and turned it aside, and then smote back at Little John, who also turned the blow. And so this mighty battle began. Then up and down and back and forth they trod, the blows falling so thick and fast that at a distance one would have thought that half a score of men were fighting. Thus they fought for nigh a half an hour, until the ground was all plowed up with the digging of their heels, and their breathing grew labored like the ox in the furrow. But Little John suffered the most, for he had become unused to such stiff labor, and his joints were not as supple as they had been before he went to dwell with the sheriff. All this time Robin Hood lay beneath a bush, rejoicing at such a comely bout of quarterstaff. "By my faith," quoth he to himself, "never had I thought to see Little John so evenly matched in all my life. Belike, though, he would have overcome yon fellow before this, had he been in his former trim." At last Little John saw his chance, and throwing all the strength he felt going from him into one blow that might have felled an ox, he struck at the tanner with might and main. And now did the tanner's cowhide cap stand him in good stead, and but for it, he might never have held staff in hand again.
As it was, the blow he caught beside the head was so shrewd that it sent him staggering across the little glade, so that if Little John had had the strength to follow up his vantage, it would have been ill for stout Arthur. But he regained himself quickly, and at arm's length struck back a blow at Little John, and this time the stroke reached its mark, and down went Little John at full length, his cudgel flying from his hand as he fell. Then, raising his staff, stout Arthur dealt him another blow upon the ribs. "Hold!" roared Little John. "Wouldst thou strike a man when he is down?" "Aye, marry, would I," quoth the tanner, giving him another thwack with his staff. "Stop!" roared Little John. "Help! Hold, I say! Yield me, I say, good fellow!" "Hast thou had enough?" asked the tanner grimly, holding his staff aloft. "Aye, marry, and more than enough." "And thou dost own that I am the better man of the two?" "Yea, truly, and a murrain seize thee," said Little John, the first aloud, and the last to his beard. "Then thou mayst go thy ways, and thank thy patron saint that I am a merciful man," said the tanner. "A plague o' such mercy as thine," said Little John, sitting up and feeling his ribs where the tanner had cudgelled him. "I make my vow, my ribs feel as though every one of them were broken in twain. I tell thee, good fellow, I did think there was never a man in all Nottinghamshire could do to me what thou hast done this day." "And so thought I also," cried Robin Hood, bursting out of the thicket and shouting with laughter till the tears ran down his cheeks.
"Oh, man," said he, as well as he could for his mirth, didst go over like a bottle knocked from a wall. I did see the whole merry bout, and never did I think to see thee yield thyself so hand and foot to any man in all merry England. I was seeking thee, to chide thee for leaving my bidding undone, but thou hast been paid all I owed thee, full measure, pressed down and overflowing by this good fellow. Marry, did reach out his arm full length, while thou stood gaping at him, and with a pretty rap tumbled thee over as never have I seen one tumbled before." So spoke bold Robin, and all the time Little John sat upon the ground, looking as though he had sour curds in his mouth. "What may be thy name, good fellow?" said Robin next, turning to the tanner. "Men do call me Arthur a Bland," spoke up the tanner boldly. "And now what may be thy name?" "Ha! Arthur a Bland," quoth Robin. "I have heard thy name before, good fellow. Thou didst break the crown of a friend of mine at the fair at Ely last October. The folk there call him Jock o' Nottingham. We call him Will Scavelock. This poor fellow, whom thou hast so belaboured, is counted the best hand at the quarterstaff in all merry England. His name is Little John, and mine Robin Hood." "How?" cried the tanner. "Art thou indeed the great Robin Hood, and this is the famous Little John? Marry, had I known who thou art, I would never have been so bold as to lift my hand against thee. Let me help thee to thy feet, good Master Little John, and let me brush the dust from off your coat."
"Nay," quoth Little John testily, at the same time rising carefully, as though his bones had been made of glass. "I can help myself, good fellow, without thy aid. And let me tell thee, had it not been for that vile cowskin cap of thine, it would have been ill for thee this day." At this Robin laughed again, and turning to the tanner he said, "Wilt thou join my band, good Arthur? For I make my vow thou art one of the stoutest men that ever mine eyes beheld." "Will I join thy band?" cried the tanner joyfully. "Aye, marry will I. Hey for a merry life," cried he, leaping aloft and snapping his fingers, "and hey for the life I love! Away with tan bark and filthy vats and foul cowhides! I will follow thee to the ends of the earth, good master, and not a herd of dun deer in all the forest but shall know the sound of the twang of my bowstring." "As for thee, Little John," said Robin, turning to him and laughing, "thou wilt start once more for Ancaster, and we will go part way with thee, for I will not have thee turn again to either the right hand or the left till thou hast fairly gotten away from Sherwood. There are other inns that thou knowest yet hereabouts." Thereupon, leaving the thickets, they took once more to the highway and departed upon their business.
Robin Hood and Will Scarlet. Thus they travelled along the sunny road, 3 stout fellows such as you could hardly match anywhere else in all merry England. Many stopped to gaze after them as they strode along, so broad were their shoulders, and so sturdy their gait. Quoth Robin Hood to Little John, "Why didst thou not go straight to Ancaster yesterday as I told thee? Thou hadst not gotten thyself into such a coil, hadst thou done as I ordered."
I feared the rain that threatened, said Little John in a sullen tone, for he was vexed at being so chaffed by Robin with what had happened to him. The rain! Cried Robin, stopping of a sudden in the middle of the road and looking at Little John in wonder. Why, thou great oaf! Not a drop of rain has fallen these 3 days, neither has any threatened, nor hath there been a sign of foul weather in earth or sky or water. Nevertheless, growled Little John, the holy saints within holdeth the waters of the heavens in his pewter pot, and he could have poured them out, had he chosen, even from a clear sky. And wouldst thou have had me wet to the skin? At this Robin Hood burst into a roar of laughter. "O Little John," said he, "what butter wits hast thou in that head of thine? Who could hold anger against such a one as thou art?" So saying, they all stepped out once more, with the right foot foremost, as the saying is. After they had travelled some distance, the day being warm and the doss dry, Robin Hood waxed thirsty. So, there being a fountain of water as cold as ice just behind the hedgerow, they crossed the stile and came to where the water bubbled up from beneath a mossy stone. Here, kneeling and making cups of the palms of their hands, they drank their fill. And then, the spot being cool and shady, they stretched their limbs and rested them for a space.
In front of them, over beyond the hedge, the dusty road stretched away across the plain. Behind them, the meadowlands and bright green fields of tender young corn lay broadly in the sun, and overhead spread the shade of the cool, rustling leaves of the beechen tree. Pleasantly to their nostrils came the tender fragrance of the purple violets and wild thyme that grew within the dewy moisture of the edge of the little fountain, and pleasantly came the soft gurgle of the water. All was so pleasant and so full of the gentle joy of the bright Maytime that for a long time no one of the 3 cared to speak, but each lay on his back, gazing up through the trembling leaves of the trees to the bright sky overhead. At last, Robin, whose thoughts were not quite so busy wool-gathering as those of the others, and who had been gazing around him now and then, broke the silence. "Hey day," quoth he, "yon is a gaily feathered bud, I take my vow." The others looked and saw a young man walking slowly down the highway. Gay was he indeed, as Robin had said, and a fine figure he cut, for his doublet was of scarlet silk, and his stockings also. A handsome sword hung by his side, the embossed leathern scabbard being picked out with fine threads of gold. His cap was of scarlet velvet, and a broad feather hung down behind and back of one ear. His hair was long and yellow and curled upon his shoulders, and in his hand he bore an early rose, which he smelled at daintily now and then. "By my life," quoth Robin Hood, laughing, "saw ye e'er such a pretty mincing fellow?" "Truly, his clothes have overmuch prettiness for my taste," quoth Arthur a Bland.
"But nevertheless his shoulders are broad and his loins are narrow. And seest thou, good master, how that his arms hang from his body? They dangle not down like spindles, but hang stiff and bend at the elbow. I take my vow, there be no bread and milk limbs in those fine clothes, but stiff joints and tough thews." "Methinks thou art right, friend Arthur," said Little John. "I do verily think that yon is no such rose-leaf and whipped cream gallant as he would have one take him to be." "Pah!" quoth Robin Hood, "the sight of such a fellow doth put a nasty taste into my mouth. Look how he doth hold that fair flower betwixt his thumb and finger, as he would say, 'Good Rose, I like thee not so ill, but I can bear thy odor for a little while.' I take it ye are both wrong, and verily believe that were a furious mouse to run across his path, he would cry, 'La!' or 'Alec-a-day!' and fall straightway into a swoon. I wonder who he may be." "Some great baron's son, I doubt not," answered Little John, "with good and true men's money lining his purse." "Ay, marry, that is true, I make no doubt," quoth Robin.
what a pity that such men as he, that have no thought but to go abroad in gay clothes, should have good fellows whose shoes they are not fit to tie, dancing at their bidding. By St. Dunstan, St. Alfred, St. Withold, and all the good men in the Saxon calendar, it doth make me mad to see such gay lordlings from over the sea go stepping on the necks of good Saxons who owned this land before ever their great-grandsires chewed rind of brawn. By the bright bow of heaven, I will have their ill-gotten gains from them, even though I hang for it as high as e'er a forest tree in Sherwood."
"Why, how now, master," quoth Little John, "what heat is this? Thou dost set thy pot a-boiling, and mayhap no bacon to cook. Methinks sound fellow's hair is overlight for Norman locks. He may be a good man and true, for aught thou knowest." "Nay," said Robin, "my head against a leaden farthing, he is what I say. So, lie ye both here, I say, till I show you how I drub this fellow." So saying, Robin Hood stepped forth from the shade of the beech tree, crossed the stile, and stood in the middle of the road, with his hands on his hips in the stranger's path. Meantime, the stranger, who had been walking so slowly that all this talk was held before he came opposite the place where they were, neither quickened his pace nor seemed to see that such a man as Robin Hood was in the world. So Robin stood in the middle of the road, waiting while the other walked slowly forward, smelling his rose and looking this way and that, and everywhere except at Robin. "Hold!" cried Robin, when at last the other had come close to him. "Hold! Stand where thou art!" "Wherefore should I hold, good fellow?" said the stranger, in soft and gentle voice. "And wherefore should I stand where I am? Nevertheless, as thou dost desire that I should stay, I will abide for a short time, that I may hear what thou mayest have to say to me." "Then," quoth Robin, "as thou dost so fairly do as I tell thee, and dost give me such soft speech, I will also treat thee with all due courtesy. I would have thee know, fair friend, that I am, as it were, a votary at the shrine of St. Wilfrid, who, thou mayest know, took, willy-nilly, all their gold from the heathen, and melted it up into candlesticks. Wherefore, upon such as come hereabouts, I levy a certain toll, which I use for a better purpose, I hope, than to make candlesticks withal. Therefore, sweet Chuck, I would have thee deliver to me thy purse, that I may look into it, and judge, to the best of my poor powers, whether thou hast more wealth about thee than our law allows. For, as our good Gaffer Swantold saith, he who is fat from overliving must needs lose blood. All this time the youth had been sniffing at the rose that he held betwixt his thumb and finger. "Nay," said he with a gentle smile, when Robin Hood had done, "I do love to hear thee talk, thou pretty fellow, and if, haply, thou art not yet done, finish, I beseech thee, I have yet some little time to stay." "I have said all," quoth Robin, "and now, if thou wilt give me thy purse, I will let thee go thy way without let or hindrance, so soon as I shall see what it may hold. I will take none from thee if thou hast but little." "Alas, it doth grieve me much," said the other, "that I cannot do as thou dost wish. I have nothing to give thee. Let me go my way, I prithee. I have done thee no harm." "Nay, thou goest not," quoth Robin, "till thou hast shown me thy purse." "Good friend," said the other gently, "I have business elsewhere. I have given thee much time and have heard thee patiently. Prithee, let me depart in peace." "I have spoken to thee, friend," said Robin sternly, "and I now tell thee again that thou goest not one step forward till thou hast done as I bid thee." So saying, he raised his quarterstaff above his head in a threatening way. "Alas," said the stranger sadly, "it doth grieve me that this thing must be. I fear much that I must slay thee, thou poor fellow." So saying, he drew his sword. "Put by thy weapon," quoth Robin. "I would take no vantage of thee. Thy sword cannot stand against an oaken staff such as mine. I could snap it like a barley straw.
Yonder is a good oaken thicket by the roadside. Take thee a cudgel fence and defend thyself fairly, if thou hast a taste for a sound drubbing." First, the stranger measured Robin with his eye, and then he measured the oaken staff. "Thou art right, good fellow," said he presently. "Truly, my sword is no match for that cudgel of thine. Bide thee a while till I get me a staff." So saying, he threw aside the rose that he had been holding all this time, thrust his sword back into the scabbard, and with a more hasty step than he had yet used, stepped to the roadside where grew the little clump of ground oaks Robin had spoken of. Choosing among them, he presently found a sapling to his liking. He did not cut it, but, rolling up his sleeves a little way, he laid hold of it, placed his heel against the ground, and with one mighty pull plucked the young tree up by the roots from out the very earth. Then he came back, trimming away the roots and tender stems with his sword as quietly as if he had done naught to speak of. Little John and the tanner had been watching all that passed, but when they saw the stranger drag the sapling up from the earth and heard the rending and snapping of its roots, the tanner pursed his lips together, drawing his breath between them in a long, inward whistle.
"By the breath of my body," said Little John, as soon as he could gather his wits from their wonder. "Sawest thou that, Arthur? Marry, I think our poor master will stand but an ill chance with yon fellow. By Our Lady, he plucked up yon green tree as it were a barley straw." Whatever Robin Hood thought, he stood his ground, and now he and the stranger in scarlet stood face to face. Well did Robin Hood hold his own that day as a mid-country yeoman. This way and that they fought, and back and forth, Robin's skill against the stranger's strength. The dust of the highway rose up around them like a cloud, so that at times Little John and the tanner could see nothing, but only hear the rattle of the staves against one another. Thrice Robin Hood struck the stranger, once upon the arm, and twice upon the ribs, and yet had he warded all the others' blows, only one of which, had it met its mark, would have laid stout Robin lower in the dust than he had ever gone before. At last the stranger struck Robin's cudgel so fairly in the middle that he could hardly hold his staff in his hand. Again he struck, and Robin bent beneath the blow. A third time he struck, and now not only fairly beat down Robin's guard, but gave him such a rap also that down he tumbled into the dusty road. "Hold!" cried Robin Hood, when he saw the stranger raising his staff once more. "I yield me." "Hold!" cried Little John, bursting from his cover, with the tanner at his heels. "Hold! Give over, I say!"
"Nay," answered the stranger quietly. "If there be two more of you, and each as stout as this good fellow, I am like to have my hands full. Nevertheless, come on, and I will strive my best to serve you all." "Stop!" cried Robin Hood. "We will fight no more. I take my vow, this is an ill day for thee and me, Little John. I do verily believe that my wrist and eke my arm are palsied by the jar of the blow that this stranger struck me." Then Little John turned to Robin Hood. "Why, how now, good master?" said he. "Alas, thou art in an ill plight. Marry, thy jerkin is all befouled with the dust of the road. Let me help thee to arise." "A plague on thy aid!" cried Robin angrily. "I can get to my feet without thy help, good fellow." "Nay, but let me at least dust thy coat for thee. I fear thy poor bones are mightily sore," quoth Little John, soberly, but with a sly twinkle in his eyes. "Give over, I say," quoth Robin in a fume. "My coat have been dusted enough already, without aid of thine." Then, turning to the stranger, he said, "What may be thy name, good fellow?" "My name is Gamwell," answered the other. "Ha!" cried Robin. "Is it even so? I have near kin of that name. Whence camest thou, fair friend?" "From Maxfield town I come," answered the stranger. "There was I born and bred, and thence I come to seek my mother's young brother, whom men call Robin Hood. So, if perchance thou mayest direct me—"
"Ha!"
Will Gamwell!" cried Robin, placing both hands upon the other's shoulders and holding him off at arm's length. "Surely it can be none other. I might have known thee by that pretty maiden air of thine, that dainty, finicking manner of gait. Dost thou not know me, lad? Look upon me well." "Now, by the breath of my body," cried the other, "I do believe from my heart that thou art mine own Uncle Robin. Nay, certain it is so." And each flung his arms around the other, kissing him upon the cheek. Then once more Robin held his kinsman off at arm's length and scanned him keenly from top to toe. "Why, how now?" quoth he. "What change is here? Verily, some 8 or 10 years ago I left thee a stripling lad with great joints and ill-hung limbs, and lo, here thou art, as tight a fellow as I ever set mine eyes upon. Dost thou not remember, lad, how I showed thee the proper way to nip the goose feather betwixt thy fingers and throw out thy bow arm steadily? Thou gavest great promise of being a keen archer. And dost thou not mind how I taught thee to fend and parry with the cudgel?" "Yea," said young Gamwell, "and I did so look up to thee, and thought thee so above all other men, that I make my vow, had I known who thou wert, I would never have dared to lift hand against thee this day. I trust I did thee no great harm." "No, no," quoth Robin hastily, and looking sideways at Little John, "thou didst not harm me. But say no more of that, I prithee. Yet I will say, lad, that I hope I may never feel again such a blow as thou didst give me. Bar lady, my arm doth tingle yet from fingernail to elbow. Truly, I thought that I was palsied for life."
"I tell thee, coz, that thou art the strongest man that ever I laid mine eyes upon. I take my vow. I felt my stomach quake when I beheld thee pluck up yon green tree as thou didst. But tell me, how camest thou to leave Sir Edward and thy mother?" "Alas," answered young Gamwell, "it is an ill story, uncle, that I have to tell thee. My father's steward, who came to us after old Giles Crookleg died, was ever a saucy varlet, and I know not why my father kept him, saving that he did oversee with great judgment. It used to gall me to hear him speak up so boldly to my father, who, thou knowest, was ever a patient man to those about him, and slow to anger and harsh words. Well, one day, and an ill day it was for that saucy fellow, he sought to berate my father, I standing by. I could stand it no longer, good uncle, so, stepping forth, I gave him a box o' the ear, and, wouldst thou believe it? The fellow straightway died o't. I think they said I broke his neck or something of the like. So off they packed me to seek thee and escape the law. I was on my way when thou sawest me, and here I am." "Well, by the faith of my heart," quoth Robin Hood, "for anyone escaping the law, thou wast taking it the most easily that ever I beheld in all my life. Whenever did anyone in all the world see one who had slain a man and was escaping because of it, tripping along the highway like a dainty court damsel, sniffing at a rose the while?" "Nay, uncle," answered young Gamwell, "Over haste never churned good butter, as the old saying hath it. Moreover, I do verily believe that this overstrength of my body hath taken the nimbleness out of my heels. Why, thou didst but just now rap me thrice, and I thee never a once, save by overbearing thee by my strength." "Nay," quoth Robin, "let us say no more on that score. I am right glad to see thee, Will, and thou wilt add great honor and credit to my band of merry fellows. But thou must change thy name, for warrants will be out presently against thee. So, because of thy gay clothes, thou shalt henceforth and for aye be called Will Scarlet." "Will Scarlet," quoth Little John, stepping forward and reaching out his great palm, which the other took. "Will Scarlet, the name fitteth thee well. Right glad am I to welcome thee among us. I am called Little John, and this is a new member who has just joined us, a stout tanner named Arthur a Bland. Thou art like to achieve fame, Will, let me tell thee,
For there will be many a merry ballad sung about the country, and many a merry story told in Sherwood of how Robin Hood taught Little John and Arthur a Bland the proper way to use the quarterstaff. Likewise, as it were, how our good master bit off so large a piece of cake that he choked on it. Nay, good Little John, quoth Robin gently, for he liked ill to have such a jest told of him. Why should we speak of this little matter? Prithee, let us keep this day's doings among ourselves. With all my heart, quoth Little John.
But, good master, I thought that thou didst love a merry story, because thou hast so often made a jest about a certain increase of fatness on my joints, of flesh gathered by my abiding with the Sheriff of— Nay, good Little John, said Robin Hood hastily, I do bethink me I have said full enough on that score. It is well, quoth Little John, for in truth I myself have tired of it somewhat. But now I bethink me, thou didst also seem minded to make a jest of the rain that threatened last night, so— Nay then, said Robin Hood testily, I was mistaken. I remember me now it did seem to threaten rain. Truly, I did think so myself, quoth Little John. Therefore, no doubt, thou didst think it was wise of me to abide all night at the Blue Boar Inn, instead of venturing forth in such stormy weather, dost thou not? A plague of thee and thy doings, cried Robin Hood. If thou wilt have it so, thou wert right to abide wherever thou didst choose. Once more, it is well, quoth Little John. As for myself, I have been blind this day. I did not see thee drubbed, I did not see thee tumbled heels over head in the dust, and if any man says that thou wert, I can with a clear conscience rattle his lying tongue betwixt his teeth. Come, cried Robin, biting his nether lip, while the others could not forbear laughing. We will go no farther today, but will return to Sherwood, and thou shalt go to Ancaster another time, Little John. So said Robin, for now that his bones were sore, he felt as though a long journey would be an ill thing for him. So, turning their backs, they retraced their steps whence they came.
The Adventure with Midge, the miller's son. When the 4 yeomen had travelled for a long time toward Sherwood again, high noontime being past, they began to wax hungry. Quoth Robin Hood, I would that I had somewhat to eat. Methinks a good loaf of white bread, with a piece of snow-white cheese, washed down with a draught of humming ale, were a feast for a king. Since thou speakest of it, said Will Scarlet, methinks it would not be amiss myself. There is that within me crieth out, Victuals, good friend, victuals. I know a house near by, said Arthur a Bland, and had I but the money, I would bring ye that ye speak of, to wit, a sweet loaf of bread, a fair cheese, and a skin of brown ale. For the matter of that, thou knowest I have money by me, good master, quoth Little John. Why, so thou hast, Little John, said Robin. How much money will it take, good Arthur, to buy us meat and drink? I think that 6 broad pennies will buy food enow for a dozen men, said the tanner. Then, give him 6 pennies, Little John, quoth Robin, for methinks food for 3 men will about fit my need. Now get thee gone, Arthur, with the money, and bring the food here, for there is a sweet shade in that thicket yonder beside the road, and there will we eat our meal. So Little John gave Arthur the money, and the other stepped to the thicket there to await the return of the tanner. After a time he came back, bearing with him a great brown loaf of bread, and a fair round cheese, and a goatskin full of stout March beer slung over his shoulders. Then Will Scarlet took his sword, and divided the loaf and the cheese into 4 fair portions, and each man helped himself. Then Robin Hood took a deep pull at the beer. Aha, said he, drawing in his breath, never have I tasted sweeter drink than this.
After this, no man spake more, but each munched away at his bread and cheese lustily, with ever and anon a pull at the beer. At last, Will Scarlet looked at a small piece of bread he still held in his hand, and quoth he, "Methinks I will give this to the sparrows." So throwing it from him, he brushed the crumbs from his jerkin. "I too," quoth Robin, "have had enough, I think." As for Little John and the tanner, they had by this time eaten every crumb of their bread and cheese. "Now," quoth Robin, "I do feel myself another man, and would fain enjoy something pleasant before going farther upon our journey. I do bethink me, Will, that thou didst used to have a pretty voice, and one that tuned sweetly upon a song. Prithee, give us one, ere we journey farther." "Truly, I do not mind turning a tune," answered Will Scarlet, "but I would not sing alone." "Nay, others will follow. Strike up, lad," quoth Robin. "In that case, 'tis well," said Will Scarlet. "I do call to mind a song that a certain minstrel used to sing in my father's hall upon occasion. I know no name for it, and so can give you none, but thus it is." Then, clearing his throat, he sang, "In the merry blossom time, when love longings food the breast, when the flower is on the lime, when the small fowl builds her nest, sweetly sings the nightingale.
And the throstle cock so bold, cuckoo in the dewy dale, and the turtle in the word. But the robin I love dear, for he singeth through the year. Robin, Robin, merry Robin, so I'd have my true love be, not to fly at the nigh sign of cold adversity. When the spring brings sweet delights, when aloft the lark doth rise, lovers woo a mellow nights, and youths peep in maidens' eyes. That time blooms the eglantine, daisies pied upon the hill, cowslips fair and columbine, dusky violets by the rill. But the ivy green cloth grow, when the north wind bringeth snow. Ivy, ivy, stanch and true, thus I'd have her love to be, not to die at the nigh breath of cold adversity. "'Tis well sung," quoth Robin, "but, cousin, I tell thee plain, I would rather hear a stout fellow like thee sing some lusty ballad than a finicking song of flowers and birds and what not. Yet thou didst sing it fair, and 'tis none so bad a snatch of a song for the matter of that. Now, Tanner, it is thy turn." "I know not," quoth Arthur, smiling with his head on one side like a budding lass that is asked to dance. "I know not that I can match our sweet friend's song. Moreover, I do verily think that I have caught a cold and have a certain tickling and huskiness in the windpipe."
"Nay, sing up, friend," quoth Little John, who sat next to him, patting him upon the shoulder. "Thou hast a fair, round, mellow voice. Let us have a touch of it." "Nay, and you will ha' a poor thing," said Arthur. "I will do my best. Have ye ever heard of the wooing of Sir Keith, the stout young Cornish knight, in good King Arthur's time?" "Methinks I have heard somewhat of it," said Robin, "but ne'ertheless strike up thy ditty, and let us hear it, for, as I do remember me, it is a gallant song, so out with it, good fellow." Thereupon, clearing his throat, the tanner, without more ado, began to sing. The Wooing of Sir Keith. King Arthur sat in his royal hall, and about on either hand was many a noble lordling tall, the greatest in the land. Sat Lancelot with raven locks, Gawain with golden hair, Sir Tristram, Kay who kept the locks, and many another there. And through the stained windows bright, from o'er the red-tiled eaves, the sunlight blazed with colored light on golden helms and greaves. But suddenly a silence came about the table round, for up the hall there walked a dame, bent nigh unto the ground.
Her nose was hooked, her eyes were bleared, her locks were lank and white. Upon her chin there grew a beard, she was a gruesome sight.
And so with crawling step she came and kneeled at Arthur's feet. Quoth Kay, she is the foulest dame that e'er my sight did greet. O mighty king, of thee I crave a boon on bended knee. 'Twas thus she spoke, what wouldst thou have? Quoth Arthur, king, of me. Quoth she, I have a foul disease, doth gnaw my very heart, and but one thing can bring me ease, or cure my bitter smart. There is no rest, no ease for me, north, east, or west, or south, till Christian knight will willingly thrice kiss me on the mouth. Nor wedded may this child have been, that giveth ease to me. Nor may he be constrained, I ween, but kiss me willingly. So is there here one Christian knight of such a noble strain, that he will give a tortured wight sweet ease of mortal pain? A wedded man, quoth Arthur king, a wedded man I be. Else would I deem it noble thing to kiss thee willingly. Now, Lancelot, in all men's sight, thou art the head and chief of chivalry. Come, noble knight, and give her quick relief.
But Lancelot he turned aside, and looked upon the ground, for it did sting his haughty pride, to hear them laugh around. Come thou, Sir Tristram, quoth the king. Quoth he, it cannot be, for ne'er can I my stomach bring to do it willingly. Wilt thou, Sir Kay, thou scornful wight? Quoth Kay, nay, by my troth, what noble dame would kiss a knight that kissed so foul a mouth? Wilt thou, Gawain? I cannot, king. Sir Geraint, nay, not I. My kisses no relief could bring, for sooner would I die. Then up and spake the youngest man of all about the board. Now such relief as Christian can, I'll give to her, my lord. It was Sir Keith, a youthful mite, yet strong of limb and bold, with beard upon his chin as light as finest threads of gold. Quoth Kay, he hath no mistress yet, that he may call his own, but here is one that's quick to get, as she herself has shown. He kissed her once, he kissed her twice, he kissed her 3 times over. A wondrous change came in a trice, and she was foul no more.
Her cheeks grew red as any rose, her brow as white as lawn, her bosom like the winter snows, her eyes like those of fawn. Her breath grew sweet as summer breeze that blows the meadows o'er. Her voice grew soft as rustling trees, and cracked and harsh no more. Her hair grew glittering like the gold, her hands as white as milk. Her filthy rags, so foul and old, were changed to robes of silk. In great amaze the knights did stare. Quoth Kay, I make my vow, if it will please thee, lady fair, I'll gladly kiss thee now. But young Sir Keith kneeled on one knee, and kissed her robes so fair. Oh, let me be thy slave, said he, for none to thee compare. She bent her down, she kissed his brow, she kissed his lips and eyes. Quoth she, thou art my master now, my lord, my love, arise. And all the wealth that is mine own, my lands, I give to thee, for never knight hath lady shown such noble courtesy. Bewitched was I in bitter pain, but thou hast set me free, so now I am myself again, I give myself to thee.
Yea, truly, quoth Robin Hood, when the tanner had made an end of singing. It is, as I remember it, a fair ditty and a ballad with a pleasing tune of a song. It hath oftentimes seemed to me, said Will Scarlet, that it hath a certain motive in it, e'en such as this, that a duty which seemeth to us sometimes ugly and harsh,
when we do kiss it fairly upon the mouth, so to speak, is no such foul thing after all. Methinks thou art right, quoth Robin, and contrawise, that when we kiss a pleasure that appeareth gay, it turneth foul to us. Is it not so, Little John? Truly such a thing hath brought thee sore thumps this day. Nay, man, never look down in the mouth. Clear thy pipes, and sing us a ditty. Nay, said Little John, I have none as fair as that Merry Arthur has trolled. They are all poor things that I know. Moreover, my voice is not in tune today, and I would not spoil even a tolerable song by ill singing. Upon this all pressed Little John to sing, so that when he had denied them a proper length of time, such as is seemly in one that is asked to sing, he presently yielded. Quoth he, Well, an ye will ha' it so, I will give you what I can. Like to fair will, I have no title to my ditty, but thus it runs. O lady mine, the spring is here, with a hey nunny nunny, the sweet love season of the year, with a ninny ninny nonny. Now lad and lass lie in the grass that groweth green, with flowers between. The buck doth rest, the leaves do start, the cock doth crow, the breeze doth blow, and all things laugh in.
Who may yon fellow be coming along the road? Said Robin, breaking into a song. I know not, quoth Little John in a surly voice, but this I do know, that it is an ill thing to do to check the flow of a good song. Nay, Little John, said Robin, be not vexed, I prythee, but I have been watching him coming along, bent beneath that great bag over his shoulder, ever since thou didst begin thy song. Look, Little John, I pray, and see if thou knowest him. Little John looked whither Robin Hood pointed. Truly, quoth he, after a time, I think yon fellow is a certain young miller I have seen now and then around the edge of Sherwood. A poor wight, methinks, to spoil a good song about. Now thou speakest of him, quoth Robin Hood, methinks I myself have seen him now and then. Have he not a mill over beyond Nottingham town, nigh to the Salisbury road? Thou art right, that is the man, said Little John. A good stout fellow, quoth Robin. I saw him crack Ned of Bradford's crown about a fortnight since, and never saw I hair lifted more neatly in all my life before. By this time, the young miller had come so near that they could see him clearly. His clothes were dusted with flour, and over his back he carried a great sack of meal, bending so as to bring the whole weight upon his shoulders. And across the sack was a thick quarterstaff. His limbs were stout and strong, and he strode along the dusty road right sturdily with the heavy sack across his shoulders. His cheeks were ruddy as a winter hip, his hair was flaxen in color, and on his chin was a downy growth of flaxen beard.
A good honest fellow, quoth Robin Hood, and such an one as is a credit to English yeomanry. Now let us have a merry jest with him. We will forth as though we were common thieves, and pretend to rob him of his honest gains. Then will we take him into the forest, and give him a feast such as his stomach never held in all his life before. We will flood his throat with good canary, and send him home with crowns in his purse for every penny he hath. What say ye, lads?
Truly, it is a merry thought, said Will Scarlet. It is well planned, quoth Little John, but all the saints preserve us from any more drubbings this day. Marry, my poor bones ache, so that Prithee peace, Little John, quoth Robin. Thy foolish tongue will get us both well laughed at yet. My foolish tongue, forsooth, growled Little John to Arthur a Bland. I would it could keep our master from getting us into another coil this day. But now the miller, plodding along the road, had come opposite to where the yeoman lay hidden, whereupon all four of them ran at him and surrounded him. Hold, friend, cried Robin to the miller.
whereupon he turned slowly, with the weight of the bag upon his shoulder, and looked at each in turn, all bewildered. For though a good stout man, his wits did not skip like roasting chestnuts. "Who bids me stay?" said the miller in a voice deep and gruff, like the growl of a great dog. "Marry, that do I," quoth Robin. "And let me tell thee, friend, thou hadst best mind my bidding."
"And who art thou, good friend?" said the miller, throwing the great sack of meal from his shoulder to the ground. "And who are those with thee?" "We be 4 good Christian men," quoth Robin, "and would fain help thee by carrying part of thy heavy load." "I give you all thanks," said the miller, "but my bag is none that heavy that I cannot carry it e'en by myself." "Nay, thou dost mistake," quoth Robin. "I meant that thou mightest perhaps have some heavy farthings or pence about thee, not to speak of silver and gold. Our good gaffer Swanthold saith that gold is an over-heavy burden for a 2-legged ass to carry, so we would e'en lift some of this load from thee." "Alas," cried the miller, "what would you do to me? I have not about me so much as a clipped groat. Do me no harm, I pray you, but let me depart in peace. Moreover, let me tell you that ye are upon Robin Hood's ground, and should he find you seeking to rob an honest craftsman, he will clip your ears to your heads and surge you even to the walls of Nottingham." "In truth, I fear Robin Hood no more than I do myself," quoth jolly Robin. "Thou must this day give up to me every penny thou hast about thee. Nay, if thou dost budge an inch, I will rattle this staff about thine ears." "Nay, smite me not," cried the miller, throwing up his elbow as though he feared the blow. "Thou mayst search me if thou wilt, but thou wilt find nothing upon me, pouch, pocket, or skin."
"Is it so?" quoth Robin Hood, looking keenly upon him. "Now I believe that what thou tellest is no true tale. If I am not much mistook, thou hast somewhat in the bottom of that fat sack of meal. Good Arthur, empty the bag upon the ground. I warrant thou wilt find a shilling or 2 in the flour." "Alas!" cried the miller, falling upon his knees, "spoil not all my good meal. It can better you not, and will ruin me. Spare it, and I will give up the money in the bag." "Huh," quoth Robin, nudging Will Scarlet. "Is it so? And have I found where thy money lies? Marry, I have a wondrous nose for the blessed image of good King Harry. I thought that I smelled gold and silver beneath the barley meal. Bring it straight forth, miller." Then slowly the miller arose to his feet, and slowly and unwillingly he untied the mouth of the bag, and slowly thrust his hands into the meal, and began fumbling about with his arms buried to the elbows in the barley flour. The others gathered round him, their heads together, looking and wondering what he would bring forth. So they stood, all with their heads close together, gazing down into the sack. But while he pretended to be searching for the money, the miller gathered 2 great handfuls of meal. "Ha!" quoth he, "here they are, the beauties." Then, as the others leaned still more forward to see what he had, he suddenly cast the meal into their faces, filling their eyes and noses and mouths with the flour, blinding and half choking them. Arthur a Bland was worse off than any, for his mouth was open, agape with wonder of what was to come, so that a great cloud of flour flew down his throat, setting him a-coughing till he could scarcely stand.
Then, while all 4 stumbled about, roaring with the smart of the meal in their eyeballs, and while they rubbed their eyes till the tears made great channels on their faces through the meal, the miller seized another handful of flour, and another, throwing it in their faces, so that even had they had a glimmering of light before, they were now as blind as ever a beggar in Nottinghamshire, while their hair and beards and clothes were as white as snow. Then, catching up his great crab-staff, the miller began laying about him as though he were clean gone mad.
This way and that skipped the four, like peas on a drumhead, but they could see neither to defend themselves nor to run away. Thwack, thwack, went the miller's cudgel across their backs, and at every blow great white clouds of flour rose in the air from their jackets and went drifting down the breeze. "Stop!" roared Robin at last. "Give over, good friend. I am Robin Hood." "Thou liest, thou knave!" cried the miller, giving him a rap on the ribs that sent up a great cloud of flour like a puff of smoke. "Stout Robin never robbed an honest tradesman. Ha! Thou wouldst have my money, wouldst thou?" And he gave him another blow. "Nay, thou art not getting thy share, thou long-legged knave. Share and share alike." And he smote Little John across the shoulders, so that he sent him skipping half across the road. "Nay, fear not. It is thy turn now, Blackbeard." And he gave the tanner a crack that made him roar for all his coughing. "How now, Redcoat? Let me brush the dust from thee," cried he, smiting Will Scarlet.
And so he gave them merry words and blows until they could scarcely stand, and whenever he saw one like to clear his eyes, he threw more flour in his face. At last, Robin Hood found his horn, and clapping it to his lips, blew 3 loud blasts upon it. Now it chanced that Will Stuteley and a party of Robin's men were in the glade, not far from where this merry sport was going forward. Hearing the hubbub of voices and blows that sounded like the noise of a flail in the barn in winter-time, they stopped, listening and wondering what was toward. Quoth Will Stuteley, "Now, if I mistake not, there is some stout battle with cudgels going forward not far hence. I would fain see this pretty sight." So saying, he and the whole party turned their steps whence the noise came. When they had come near where all the tumult sounded, they heard the 3 blasts of Robin's bugle horn. "Quick!" cried young David of Doncaster. "Our master is in sore need." So, without stopping a moment, they dashed forward with might and main and burst forth from the covert into the high road. But what a sight was that which they saw! The road was all white with meal, and 5 men stood there, also white with meal from top to toe, for much of the barley flour had fallen back upon the miller. "What is thy need, master?" cried Will Stuteley, "and what doth all this mean?" "Why," quoth Robin in a mighty passion, "yon traitor Feltlow hath come as nigh slaying me as e'er a man in all the world. Hadst thou not come quickly, good Stuteley, thy master had been dead."
Hereupon, while he and the 3 others rubbed the meal from their eyes, and Will Stuteley and his men brushed their clothes clean, he told them all how that he had meant to pass a jest upon the miller, which same had turned so grievously upon them. "Quick, men, seize the vile miller," cried Stuteley, who was nigh choking with laughter as were the rest, whereupon several ran upon the stout fellow and, seizing him, bound his arms behind his back with bowstrings. "Ha!" cried Robin, when they brought the trembling miller to him. "Thou wouldst murder me, wouldst thou? By my faith!" Here he stopped and stood glaring upon the miller grimly. But Robin's anger could not hold, so first his eyes twinkled, and then in spite of all he broke into a laugh. Now when they saw their master laugh, the yeomen who stood around couldn't contain themselves no longer, and a mighty shout of laughter went up from all. Many could not stand, but rolled upon the ground from pure merriment. "What is thy name, good fellow?" said Robin at last to the miller, who stood gaping and as though he were in a maze. "Alas, sir, I am Midge, the miller's son," said he in a frightened voice. "I make my vow," quoth merry Robin, smiting him upon the shoulder, "thou art the mightiest Midge that e'er mine eyes beheld. Now wilt thou leave thy dusty mill and come and join my band? By my faith, thou art too stout a man to spend thy days betwixt the hopper and the till."
"Then truly, if thou dost forgive me for the blows I struck, not knowing who thou wast, I will join with thee right merrily," said the miller. "Then have I gained this day," quoth Robin, "the 3 stoutest yeomen in all Nottinghamshire. We will get us away to the greenwood tree, and there hold a merry feast in honor of our new friends, and mayhap a cup or 2 of good sack and canary may mellow the soreness of my poor joints and bones, though I warrant it will be many a day before I am again the man I was." So saying, he turned and led the way, the rest following, and so they entered the forest once more and were lost to sight. So that night all was ablaze with crackling fires in the woodlands, for though Robin and those others spoken of, only excepting Midge, the miller's son, had many a sore bump and bruise here and there on their bodies, they were still not so sore in the joints that they could not enjoy a jolly feast given all in welcome to the new members of the band. Thus, with songs and jesting and laughter that echoed through the deeper and more silent nooks of the forest, the night passed quickly along, as such merry times are wont to do, until at last each man sought his couch, and silence fell on all things, and all things seemed to sleep. But Little John's tongue was ever one that was not easy of guidance, so that, inch by inch, the whole story of his fight with the tanner and Robin's fight with Will Scarlet leaked out, and so I have told it that you may laugh at the merry tale along with me.
Robin Hood and Allen a Dale. It has just been told how 3 unlucky adventurers fell upon Robin Hood and Little John all in one day, bringing them sore ribs and aching bones. So next we will tell how they made up for those ill happenings by a good action that came about, not without some small pain to Robin. 2 days had passed by, and somewhat of the soreness had passed away from Robin Hood's joints, yet still, when he moved of a sudden, and without thinking, pain here and there would, as it were, jog him, crying, "Thou hast had a drubbing, good fellow." The day was bright and jocund, and the morning dew still lay upon the grass. Under the greenwood tree sat Robin Hood. On one side was Will Scarlet, lying at full length upon his back, gazing up into the clear sky with hands clasped behind his head. Upon the other side sat Little John, fashioning a cudgel out of a stout crab-tree limb. Elsewhere upon the grass sat or lay many others of the band. "By the faith of my heart," quoth merry Robin, "I do bethink me that we have had no one to dine with us for this long time. Our money groweth low in the purse, for no one hath come to pay a reckoning for many a day. Now busk thee good stoutly, and choose these 6 men, and get thee gone to Foss Way or thereabouts, and see that thou bringest someone to eat with us this evening. Meantime, we will prepare a grand feast, to do whosoever may come the greater honor. And stay, good Stutely, I would have thee take Will Scarlet with thee, for it is meet that he should become acquaint with the ways of the forest." "Now do I thank thee, good master," quoth Stutely, springing to his feet, "that thou hast chosen me for this adventure. Truly, my limbs do grow slack through abiding idly here. As for 2 of my 6, I will choose Midge the miller and Arthur a Bland, for, as well thou knowest, good master, they are stout fists at the quarterstaff. Is it not so, Little John?" At this, all laughed but Little John and Robin, who twisted up his face. "I can speak for Midge," said he, "and likewise for my cousin Scarlet. This very blessed morn I looked at my ribs and found them as many colours as a beggar's cloak." So, having chosen 4 more stout fellows, Will Stutely and his band set forth to Foss Way, to find whether they might not come across some rich guest to feast that day in Sherwood with Robin and his band. For all the livelong day they abided near this highway. Each man had brought with him a good store of cold meat and a bottle of stout March beer to stay his stomach till the homecoming. So when high noontide had come, they sat them down upon the soft grass, beneath a green and wide-spreading hawthorn bush, and held a hearty and jovial feast. After this, one kept watch while the others napped, for it was a still and sultry day. Thus they passed the time pleasantly enow, but no guest such as they desired showed his face in all the time that they lay hidden there. Many passed along the dusty road in the glare of the sun. Now it was a bevy of chattering damsels merrily tripping along. Now it was a plodding tinker. Now a merry shepherd lad. Now a sturdy farmer, all gazing ahead along the road, unconscious of the 7 stout fellows that lay hidden so near them. Such were the travelers along the way,
but fat abbot, rich esquire, or money-laden usurer came there none. At last the sun began to sink low in the heavens, and the light grew red and the shadows long. The air grew full of silence. The birds twittered sleepily, and from afar came, faint and clear, the musical song of the milkmaid calling the kine home to the milking. Then Stuteley arose from where he was lying. "A plague of such ill luck," quoth he. "Here have we abided all day, and no bird worth the shooting, so to speak, hath come within reach of our bolt. Had I gone forth on an innocent errand, I had met a dozen stout priests or a score of pursy moneylenders. But it is ever thus. The dun deer are never so scarce as when one has a grey goose feather nipped betwixt the fingers. Come, lads, let us pack up and home again, say I." Accordingly, the others arose, and, coming forth from out the thicket, they all turned their toes back again to Sherwood. After they had gone some distance, Will Stuteley, who headed the party, suddenly stopped. "Hist!" quoth he, for his ears were as sharp as those of a 5-year-old fox. "Hark, lads! Methinks I hear a sound." At this, all stopped and listened with bated breath, albeit for a time they could hear nothing, their ears being duller than Stuteley's. At length they heard a faint and melancholy sound, like someone in lamentation. "Huh," quoth Will Scarlet, "this must be looked into. There is someone in distress nigh to us here." "I know not," quoth Will Stuteley, shaking his head doubtfully.
"Our master is ever rash about thrusting his finger into a boiling pot, but for my part, I see no use in getting ourselves into mischievous coils. Yon is a man's voice, if I mistake not, and a man should be always ready to get himself out from his own pothers." Then out spake Will Scarlet boldly. "Now out upon thee, to talk in that manner, Stuteley! Stay if thou dost list. I go to see what may be the trouble of this poor creature." "Nay," quoth Stuteley, "thou dost leap so quickly thou'll tumble into the ditch. Who said I would not go? Come along, say I." Thus saying, he led the way, the others following, till after they had gone a short distance, they came to a little opening in the woodland, whence a brook, after gurgling out from under the tangle of overhanging bushes, spread out into a broad and glassy pebbled pool. By the side of this pool, and beneath the branches of a willow, lay a youth upon his face, weeping aloud, the sound of which had first caught the quick ears of Stuteley. His golden locks were tangled, his clothes were all awry, and everything about him betokened sorrow and woe. Over his head from the branches of the osier hung a beautiful harp of polished wood, inlaid with gold and silver in fantastic devices. Beside him lay a stout ashen bow and half a score of fair, smooth arrows. "Hello!" shouted Will Stuteley, when they had come out from the forest into the little open spot. "Who art thou, fellow, that liest there, killing all the green grass with salt water?" Hearing the voice, the stranger sprang to his feet, and snatching up his bow and fitting a shaft, held himself in readiness for whatever ill might befall him.
"Truly," said one of the yeomen when they had seen the young stranger's face, "I do know that lad right well. He is a certain minstrel that I have seen hereabouts more than once. It was only a week ago I saw him skipping across the hill like a yearling doe. A fine sight he was then, with a flower at his ear and a cock's plume stuck in his cap. But now, methinks, our cockerel is shorn of his gay feathers." "Pah!" cried Will Stuteley, coming up to the stranger. "Wipe thine eyes, man. I do hate to see a tall, stout fellow so snivelling like a girl of 14 over a dead tomtit. Put down thy bow, man. We mean thee no harm." But Will Scarlet, seeing how the stranger, who had a young and boyish look, was stung by the words that Stuteley had spoken, came to him and put his hand upon the youth's shoulder. "Nay, thou art in trouble, poor boy," said he kindly. Mind not what these fellows have said. They are rough, but they mean thee well. Mayhap they do not understand a lad like thee. Thou shalt come with us, and perchance we may find a certain one that can aid thee in thy perplexities, whatsoever they may be. Yea, truly, come along, said Will Stuteley gruffly. I meant thee no harm, and may mean thee some good. Take down thy singing tool from off this fair tree and away with us. The youth did as he was bidden, and, with bowed head and sorrowful step, accompanied the others, walking beside Will Scarlet. So they wended their way through the forest. The bright light faded from the sky, and a glimmering gray fell over all things. From the deeper recesses of the forest, the strange whispering sounds of nighttime came to the ear. All else was silent, saving only for the rattling of their footsteps amid the crisp, dry leaves of the last winter.
At last, a ruddy glow shone before them here and there through the trees. A little farther, and they came to the open glade, now bathed in the pale moonlight. In the center of the open crackled a great fire, throwing a red glow on all around. At the fire were roasting juicy steaks of venison, pheasants, capons, and fresh fish from the river. All the air was filled with the sweet smell of good things cooking. The little band made its way across the glade, many yeomen turning with curious looks and gazing after them, but none speaking or questioning them. So, with Will Scarlet upon one side and Will Stuteley upon the other, the stranger came to where Robin Hood sat on a seat of moss under the greenwood tree, with Little John standing beside him. "Good even, fair friend," said Robin Hood, rising as the other drew near. "And hast thou come to feast with me this day?" "Alas, I know not," said the lad, looking around him with dazed eyes, for he was bewildered with all that he saw. "Truly, I know not whether I be in a dream," said he to himself in a low voice. "Nay, marry," quoth Robin, laughing, "thou art awake, as thou wilt presently find, for a fine feast is a-cooking for thee. Thou art our honored guest this day." Still the young stranger looked about him as though in a dream. Presently he turned to Robin. "Methinks," said he, "I know now where I am, and what hath befallen me. Art not thou the great Robin Hood?" "Thou hast hit the bull's-eye," quoth Robin, clapping him upon the shoulder. "Men hereabouts do call me by that name. Sin thou knowest me, thou knowest also that he who feasteth with me must pay his reckoning. I trust thou hast a full purse with thee, fair stranger."
"Alas," said the stranger, "I have no purse, nor no money either, saving only the half of a sixpence, the other half of which mine own dear love doth carry in her bosom, hung about her neck by a strand of silken thread." At this speech, a great shout of laughter went up from those around, whereat the poor boy looked as he would die of shame. But Robin Hood turned sharply to Will Stuteley. "Why, how now?" quoth he. "Is this the guest that thou hast brought us to fill our purse? Methinks thou hast brought but a lean cock to the market." "Nay, good master," answered Will Stuteley, grinning. "He is no guest of mine. It was Will Scarlet that brought him thither." Then up spoke Will Scarlet, and told how they had found the lad in sorrow, and how he had brought him to Robin, thinking that he might perchance aid him in his trouble. Then Robin Hood turned to the youth, and placing his hand upon the other's shoulder, held him off at arm's length, scanning his face closely. "A young face," quoth he in a low voice, half to himself. "A kind face, a good face. 'Tis like a maiden's for purity, and withal the fairest that e'er mine eyes did see. But, if I may judge fairly by thy looks, grief cometh to young as well as to old." At these words, spoken so kindly, the poor lad's eyes brimmed up with tears. "Nay, nay," said Robin hastily. "Cheer up, lad. I warrant thy case is not so bad that it cannot be mended.
What may be thy name? Allan a Dale is my name, good master.
Allan a Dale, repeated Robin, musing.
Allan a Dale. It doth seem to me that the name is not altogether strange to mine ears. Yea, surely thou art the minstrel of whom we have been hearing lately, whose voice so charmeth all men. Dost thou not come from the Dale of Rotherstream, over beyond Staveley? Yea, truly, answered Allan, I do come thence. How old art thou, Allan? Said Robin. I am but 20 years of age. Methinks thou art over young to be perplexed with trouble, quoth Robin kindly. Then, turning to the others, he cried, Come, lads, busk ye and get our feast ready. Only thou, Will Scarlet, and thou, Little John, stay here with me. Then, when the others had gone, each man about his business, Robin turned once more to the youth. Now, lad, said he, tell us thy troubles, and speak freely. A flow of words doth ever ease the heart of sorrows. It is like opening the waste weir when the mill dam is over full. Come, sit thou here beside me, and speak at thine ease. Then straightway the youth told the 3 yeomen all that was in his heart, at first in broken words and phrases, then freely and with greater ease when he saw that all listened closely to what he said. So he told them how he had come from York to the sweet vale of Rother, travelling the country through as a minstrel, stopping now at castle, now at hall, and now at farmhouse. How he had spent one sweet evening in a certain broad, low farmhouse, where he sang before a stout franklin, and a maiden as pure and lovely as the first snowdrop of spring. How he had played and sung to her, and how sweet Ellen o' the Dale had listened to him and had loved him. Then, in a low, sweet voice, scarcely louder than a whisper, he told how he had watched for her and met her now and then when she went abroad, but was all too afraid in her sweet presence to speak to her, until at last, beside the banks of Rother, he had spoken of his love, and she had whispered that which had made his heartstrings quiver for joy. Then they broke a 6pence between them and vowed to be true to one another forever. Next, he told how her father had discovered what was a-doing, and had taken her away from him so that he never saw her again, and his heart was sometimes like to break. How this morn, only 1 short month and a half from the time that he had seen her last, he had heard and knew it to be so, that she was to marry old Sir Stephen of Trent 2 days hence, for Ellen's father thought it would be a grand thing to have his daughter marry so high, albeit she wished it not. Nor was it wonder that a knight should wish to marry his own sweet love, who was the most beautiful maiden in all the world. To all this the yeomen listened in silence, the clatter of many voices, jesting and laughing, sounding around them, and the red light of the fire shining on their faces and in their eyes. So simple were the poor boy's words, and so deep his sorrow, that even little John felt a certain naughty lump rise in his throat. I wonder not, said Robin, after a moment's silence, that thy true love loved thee, for thou hast surely a silver cross beneath thy tongue, even like good Saint Francis, that could charm the birds of the air by his speech.
By the breath of my body, burst forth Little John, seeking to cover his feelings with angry words, I have a great part of a mind to go straightway and cudgel the nasty life out of the body of that same vile Sir Stephen. Marry come up, say I? What a plague! Does an old weazen think that tender lasses are to be bought like pullets of a market day? Out upon him! But no matter, only let him look to himself. Then up spoke Will Scarlet. Methinks it seemeth but ill done of the lass that she should so quickly change at others' bidding, more especially when it cometh to the marrying of a man as old as the same Sir Stephen. I like it not in her, Allan. Nay, said Allan hotly, thou dost wrong her. She is as soft and gentle as a stock-dove. I know her better than anyone in all the world. She may do her father's bidding, but if she marries Sir Stephen, her heart will break and she will die. My own sweet dear, He stopped and shook his head, for he could say nothing further. While the others were speaking, Robin Hood had been sunk in thought. "Methinks I have a plan might fit thy case, Allan," said he. "But tell me first, thinkest thou, lad, that thy true love hath spirit enough to marry thee were ye together in church, the banns published, and the priest found, even were her father to say her nay?" "Aye, marry would she," cried Allan eagerly. "Then if her father be the man that I take him to be, I will undertake that he shall give you both his blessing as wedded man and wife in the place of old Sir Stephen and upon his wedding morn."
But stay, now I bethink me, there is one thing reckoned not upon, the priest. Truly those of the cloth do not love me overmuch, and when it comes to doing as I desire in such a matter, they are as like as not to prove stiff-necked. As to the lesser clergy, they fear to do me a favor because of abbot or bishop. "Nay," quoth Will Scarlet, laughing, "so far as that goeth, I know of a certain friar that, couldst thou but get on the soft side of him, would do thy business even though Pope Joan herself stood forth to ban him. He is known as the Curtal Friar of Fountain Abbey, and dwelleth in Fountain Dale." "But," quoth Robin, "Fountain Abbey is a good 100 miles from here. And we would help this lad, we have no time to go thither and back before his true love will be married. Naught is to be gained there, cause." "Yea," quoth Will Scarlet, laughing again, "but this Fountain Abbey is not so far away as the one of which thou speakest, uncle. The Fountain Abbey of which I speak is no such rich and proud place as the other, but a simple little cell, yet, withal, as cozy a spot as ever stout anchorite dwelled within. I know the place well, and can guide thee thither, for though it is a goodly distance, yet methinks a stout pair of legs could carry a man there and back in one day." "Then give me thy hand, Allan," cried Robin, "and let me tell thee, I swear by the bright hair of Saint Elfrida, that this time 2 days hence Ellen a Dale shall be thy wife. I will seek this same Friar of Fountain Abbey tomorrow day, and I warrant I will get upon the soft side of him, even if I have to drub one soft."
At this, Will Scarlet laughed again. "Be not too sure of that, good uncle," quoth he. "Nevertheless, from what I know of him, I think this Curtal Friar will gladly join 2 such fair lovers, more especially if there be good eating and drinking afoot thereafter." But now one of the band came to say that the feast was spread upon the grass. So, Robin leading the way, the others followed to where the goodly feast was spread. Merry was the meal. Jest and story passed freely, and all laughed till the forest rang again. Allan laughed with the rest, for his cheeks were flushed with the hope that Robin Hood had given him. At last the feast was done, and Robin Hood turned to Allan, who sat beside him. "Now, Allan," quoth he, "so much has been said of thy singing that we would fain have a taste of thy skill ourselves. Canst thou not give us something?" "Surely," answered Allan readily, for he was no third-rate song-star that must be asked again and again, but said yes or no at the first bidding. So, taking up his harp, he ran his fingers lightly over the sweetly sounding strings, and all was hushed about the cloth. Then, backing his voice with sweet music on his harp, he sang, "May Ellen's Wedding," giving an account of how she was beloved by a fairy prince who took her to his own home. May Ellen sat beneath a thorn, and in a shower around the blossoms fell at every breeze like snow upon the ground, and in a lime tree near was heard the sweet song of a strange wild bird.
Oh, sweet, sweet, sweet! Oh, piercing sweet! Oh, lingering sweet the strain! May Ellen's heart within her breast stood still with blissful pain, and so, with listening, upturned face, she sat as dead in that fair place.
Come down from out the blossoms, bird, come down from out the tree, and on my heart I'll let thee lie, and love thee tenderly. Thus cried May Ellen, soft and low, from where the hawthorn shed its snow. Down dropped the bird on quivering wing from out the blossoming tree, and nestled in her snowy breast. My love, cried she. Then straightway home, mid sun and flower, she bare him to her own sweet bower. The day hath passed to mellow night, the moon floats o'er the lea, and in its solemn, pallid light, a youth stands silently, a youth of beauty strange and rare, within May Ellen's bower there. He stood where o'er the pavement cold the glimmering moonbeams lay. May Ellen gazed with wide, scared eyes, nor could she turn away, for as in mystic dreams we see, a spirit stood he silently. All in a low and breathless voice, "Whence comest thou?" said she. "Art thou the creature of a dream, or a vision that I see?" Then soft spake he, as night winds shiver through straining reeds beside the river.
I came a bird on feathered wing from distant fairyland, where murmuring waters softly sing upon the golden strand, where sweet trees are forever green, and there my mother is the queen. No more May Ellen leaves her bower to grace the blossoms fair, but in the hushed and midnight hour they hear her talking there. Or when the moon is shining white, they hear her singing through the night. "O don thy silks and jewels fine," May Ellen's mother said, "for hither comes the Lord of Line, and thou this lord must wed." May Ellen said, "It may not be. He ne'er shall find his wife in me." Up spoke her brother, dark and grim, "Now by the bright blue sky, ere yet a day hath gone for him, thy wicked bird shall die. For he hath wrought thee bitter harm by some strange art or cunning charm." Then with a sad and mournful song, away the bird did fly, and o'er the castle eaves and through the grey and windy sky. "Come forth," then cried the brother grim, "why dost thou gaze so after him?" It is May Ellen's wedding day, the sky is blue and fair, and many a lord and lady gay in church are gathered there. The bridegroom was Sir Hugh the Bold, all clad in silk and cloth of gold.
In came the bride in samite white, with a white wreath on her head. Her eyes were fixed with a glassy look, her face was as the dead, and when she stood among the throng, she sang a wild and wondrous song. Then came a strange and rushing sound, like the coming wind doth bring, and in the open windows shot 9 swans on whistling wing, and high above the heads they flew, in gleaming fight the darkness through. Around May Ellen's head they flew in wide and windy fight, and 3 times round the circle drew. The guests shrank in affright, and the priest beside the altar there did cross himself with muttered prayer. But the 3rd time they flew around, fair Ellen straight was gone, and in her place upon the ground there stood a snow-white swan. Then, with a wild and lovely song, it joined the swift and winged throng. There's ancient men at weddings been for 60 years and more, but such a wondrous wedding day they never saw before. But none could check and none could stay the swans that bore the bride away.
Not a sound broke the stillness when Allan a Dale had done, but all sat gazing at the handsome singer, for so sweet was his voice and the music that each man sat with bated breath, lest one drop more should come and he should lose it.
"By my faith and my troth," quoth Robin at last, drawing a deep breath, "lad, thou must not leave our company, Allan. Wilt thou not stay with us here in the sweet green forest? Truly, I do feel my heart go out toward thee with great love." Then Allan took Robin's hand and kissed it. "I will stay with thee always, dear master," said he, "for never have I known such kindness as thou hast shown me this day." Then Will Scarlet stretched forth his hand and shook Allan's in token of fellowship, as did Little John likewise. And thus the famous Allan a Dale became one of Robin Hood's band.